Hello grade 5s and welcome back. For those of you who are new and joining us for the first time today, my name is Mrs. Niverson and I'm going to be teaching you natural science. A reminder that if you have any questions about what we are learning, then you can email them to the following address. It is grade5@worksheetcloud.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Now we're going to start today's lesson by recapping what we learned yesterday and seeing if you are able to answer those few questions that I posed to you during yesterday's lesson. If you were able to see yesterday's lesson, you will know that we started to look at the classification of animals as either one of two things, vertebrates or invertebrates. Now in the picture here, just to see if you are paying attention and are wide awake, I have snuck in an image of one of the creatures we spoke about yesterday. It is the unfortunate blobfish right here underneath my scuba diver, and you may or may not remember me telling you he was voted the ugliest creature in the world. The poor thing. Now yesterday we ended off the lesson and I left you with 3 questions to see if you could come up with the answer. They were: what is the name of the mammal that doesn't give birth to live young? I asked you to see if you could find out the name of the flightless bird that comes from New Zealand and see if you could discover what is the deadliest creature in our world. So here's the answers to those questions. The name of the mammal that doesn't give birth to live young, but in fact lays eggs, is the duck-billed platypus. What is the name of the flightless bird that comes from New Zealand? Well, we have the ostrich in Africa, Antarctica have the penguin, and New Zealand have the kiwi bird. And lastly, the name of the deadliest creature in the world. Often people will think it is some form of snake or reptile, but it is in fact the mosquito. And the mosquito, I'm afraid, spreads a disease called malaria, and it is that makes it the most deadliest creature. So recapping on our understanding of vertebra and invertebrates, let's have a little look and see if you can remember and play a little game with me. So just to recap, a vertebrate is an animal that has a backbone or spine. Remember, I told you the word vertebrate comes from vertebrae, which are the individual joints of your spine. An invertebrate has no backbone. So here's a little game just to get us moving and ready for today's lesson. Can you tell me, is a dog a vertebrate or an invertebrate? It's a vertebrate. In fact, it is a mammal, remember. How about a worm? Worms are invertebrates. They do not have a backbone. Here's a good one for you. Long since extinct, but were dinosaurs vertebrates or invertebrates? Have a careful think. They were vertebrates. They had backbones. That's why if you go to the natural history museums, you can see skeletons of the dinosaurs. Humans, you and me, are we vertebrates or invertebrates? Of course we're vertebrates. We have a spine. Fish, were they one of my classes of vertebrates yesterday? Yes, they were. And how about a jellyfish? Has the word fish in it, but is it a fish? Oh, sorry. Let's go back there. No, a jellyfish is an invertebrate. Birds are vertebrates. So well done if you got those correct. So we've spent some time going over some of the questions I posed you yesterday and also recapping if something is a vertebrate or invertebrate. Let's look now at what we are going to be learning today. We have recapped if we know animals are vertebrates or invertebrates, and today we are going to be focusing on the invertebrates. Yesterday we looked at the 5 classes of vertebrates. Today we are going to identify the 3 groups of invertebrates by their unique characteristics. Now, you may remember yesterday I said it was a very good idea to start building that scientific dictionary over the next few weeks that you're at home. And we looked yesterday at using these words on the left of your screen. And today we are adding on to them with these words: arthropods, arachnids, insects, crustaceans, mollusks, flatworms, and exoskeleton. Now, it's a very good idea, if you have the time after this lesson, to rewind the video back to this page, get out a good old dictionary and start looking up the firm dictionary definitions of these words to build your scientific dictionary of your very own. We will cover them over the course of the lesson, but it's always good to go back and have a little look when you've finished. So I'm now bringing you back to our tree diagram. Remember, I said yesterday that if this is the trunk of the tree, individual branches come off to give you separate sections. And yesterday we focused on the vertebrates and the 5 different classes: mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. And today we're going to come over to the right-hand side of the tree and look at invertebrates. And here we have arthropods, mollusks, and flatworms. So, what are arthropods? Arthropods are creatures that mostly, but not always, live on land. They have a jointed body covering instead of a backbone. This is called an exoskeleton. Remember that word I referred to a little earlier in our vocab slide? Exoskeleton. Now, if you exit somewhere, you leave. It's on the outside of the building, and it's the same with an exoskeleton. Our skeletons are on the inside, and we have fleshy coverings going around us, but arthropods have their skeletons on the outside, almost like a suit of armor. Now, scientists often classify arthropods according to how many body sections they have. Insects, for example, have a different number of body sections to arachnids. And one of the questions I'm going to pose to you now that you can research after this lesson is to find out what the different body sections of an insect and an arachnid is. Now, as my last point, most arthropods are insects. However, arachnids and crustaceans are also classified as arthropods. Crustaceans are creatures such as crabs and lobsters. Remember, they've got that exoskeleton protecting them. And arachnids is the scientific term for spiders. If you're like me, you're quite scared of spiders. I don't like dealing with them at all. But the word arachnid, if you're familiar with your Greek mythology, you'll know comes from the Greek mythological tale of a young girl called Arachne, who was doomed by a goddess to always live in dark corners and spin her webs. So we move on to the next class of invertebrates, and those are our mollusks. Mollusks are creatures such as oysters and mussels, snails, and even slugs, the slimy little things. They mostly have shells, but not always. They live in water or moist surroundings, and they can draw their bodies into their shells to protect themselves if they see danger coming. Now, we've had a couple of days of rain here in Cape Town, and often I'll go out into my garden in the morning, and I'll let my dog out, and I'll find lots of snail or slug trails, the silvery little trails that catch the light in the morning, that tells me that they have been out and about with the moist weather. So you now know that those are mollusks. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking that all mollusks are quite small, but they're not. Although many of them are found under sea, one of the largest mollusks ever recorded was a 44-foot long giant squid. So don't think that they are all tiny little things. They sometimes can be very big as well. And our last family of invertebrates for today are the flatworms. Now, flatworms have soft bodies. They live in water, or in moist surroundings, and they can be parasitic, and that means that they rely on other organisms to survive. Now, they may look strange to you, and you may sit there and think they're very unfamiliar, but there are in fact over 20,000 different species of flatworms that live both on land, in water, and that water can be both the sea and in freshwater rivers and streams. So they're all around, they surround us, and we probably don't even know it. So I wonder if you can name for me in our next lesson the most common species of flatworm that humans often have to deal with. So now we've gone over the 3 different families of invertebrates, those being arthropods, which remember include our arachnids, spiders, our insects, and our crustaceans. And we have got the mollusks, those slimy but often have a shell creatures that usually live in or near water. And our final group were the flatworms. So have a little look at the picture you have in front of you now on your screen, the under the water scene. And in a second, I'm going to ask you to pause your video and take some time to both name the animals you can see on the screen and tell me if they are either vertebrates or invertebrates and the family of vertebrates or invertebrates that they belong to. Okay, so have a very close look, pause your video now, and then when you unpause, we'll go through the answers together. Okay, so let's start by separating them into vertebrates and invertebrates. I'm going to get my highlighter out now, and I'm going to highlight now all the vertebrates. So I'm going to start up at the top of the page, and these are fish. And we learned yesterday that fish are a family of vertebrates. They have backbones, they are cold-blooded, and they breathe through gills. And one other thing, they lay eggs. Okay, so they are vertebrates, they are fish. Very similar in many aspects, but also different in others, is our dolphin. Often confused to be a fish, but it is not. It is a mammal, a vertebrate mammal. Dolphins breathe with lungs. That's why they come to the surface of the water and are often seen, if you're lucky, by humans on the surface. They give birth to live young, they feed their babies milk, and they are warm-blooded. If we come in between the dolphins and the fish, we have another vertebrate, our sea turtle. Now, our turtle here is a reptile. Remember, not an amphibian. It doesn't start with gills. It is born with lungs, and it's born on dry land, hatches on dry land. Remember, they come from eggs, so I don't suppose born is probably the best word to use. So they hatch on dry land, they scurry their way into the sea, but they breathe with lungs their entire lives. They are vertebrates. Are there any other vertebrates you can see? Not that I can see. Okay, so let's change the color of my highlighter now. And I'm going to go with green for the invertebrates. Right in the middle of the page here is my octopus. An octopus, octopi, I believe is the plural. I may be wrong, or octopuses. What do you reckon, guys? I'm not so sure. But what I do know is that they belong to the mollusk family. Next to him, or her, is a jellyfish. Now, jellyfishes are also part of the mollusk family. Have a look. Are there any other mollusks you can see there? Remembering that mollusks are classified as sometimes having a shell. Aha, well done. It is our clam at the bottom. And lastly, our starfish. There's one other invertebrate on this page, but it is not a mollusk, and that is down here, our lobster. Our lobster would be classed as a crustacean and therefore come under the arthropod family. So now we've classified the creatures under the water. Let's look above ground now and have a look at the picture here. So once again, I'm going to ask you to pause your video, take a very close look at the image and see if you can separate the animals into vertebrates or invertebrates, and if you can, importantly, decide to which family of vertebrates or invertebrates they belong. Now, I hope you did hit pause because I'm going to go through the answers with you now. Again, I'm going to just quickly get my highlighter up and we're going to start once again with the vertebrates, and we'll stick to highlighting them in yellow. So what vertebrates can you see on this page? Well, to start off, big and clear in the center is the eagle. The eagle belongs to the family of birds. If it was to be classed as a vertebrate, it comes under birds. They have feathers covering their bodies, lungs, lay eggs, but not all of them can fly. This one can, but remember, not all of them can. Underneath him, I see a snake, and you should have spotted and know that snakes come under the reptile family of vertebrates. Remember, they are cold-blooded, but they do have lungs, okay? Unlike the ones that they get confused with very often. Here, this frog or toad, I'm not sure which it is in this picture, is an amphibian. And amphibians are born with gills but grow lungs as they grow. And then I'm not sure if you spotted the last vertebrate on the page, because you may have thought that it is not part of the picture, but she is, and it is the human taking the photograph, the photographer here. Remember, humans are vertebrates, we are mammals, and we give birth to live young, have hair and fur covering our bodies, hopefully hair, not fur. We feed our young milk, we're warm-blooded, and we breathe with lungs. So now we come on, highlighter, I hope I haven't missed any there, no, I don't think so, to the remaining animals, which would be the invertebrates. And we start here with our butterfly. The butterfly is an insect and therefore comes under the arthropod family. There is one other arthropod I spot on this image, and you can tell me, is it the worm or is it the grasshopper? That's right, it's the grasshopper, who's also an insect. But the worm here, I'm going to highlight, also is an invertebrate and falls under, well, the worm should give it away, and it is a flatworm species. So just like with any lesson, I like to end by reminding you of the things you've got to do when you finish with me today. I'll try to answer those questions I posed to you throughout today's lesson, such as naming the different parts of an insect, body parts that is, of an insect and arachnids. You may wish, if you've got the time, to have a little look for that Greek mythological story of Arachne the spinner. It's very fascinating. Continue to develop that scientific dictionary that I've asked you to start. It will stand you in good stead. And don't forget to look for the activities I've posted for you on WorksheetCloud. So thanks once again for joining me, grade 5s. I really appreciate it. I hope you've learned something today, and I will catch you tomorrow. Bye.